Most successful marketing campaigns are defined by how many leads that they generate. Same with sales campaigns. But what defines a lead? Oftentimes, when you ask somebody about lead generation, you'll probably end up with as many different answers as the number of people that you ask. So, how are you supposed to know if your campaign has actually been successful? Hey everybody, I'm Ian Campbell. I'm CEO of Mission Suite. Now, before we jump into today's video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so that you're notified anytime that we post new videos. So I have been in sales and marketing for just over 20 years now, and I've seen a lot of different campaigns. One of the biggest points of confusion that I've seen over the success or failure of marketing campaigns is that most people don't actually know what the real goal is. They don't know how they want to define success. It needs to be more specific than just simply, I need leads. And some people consider leads to be nothing more than an email address, while others expect them to be a full profile with name, phone number, and a list of defined needs. Well, how do we know who's right and who's wrong? Well, rather than debating that, who's right and who's wrong, let's focus on how we can define what a lead is to you and how you can clearly convey that to your team. So let's start with the question of what is a lead. Now, this is actually can be kind of a complicated question. Many people or salespeople, lead generation people, are pretty quick to say, well, everyone's a lead. And this sometimes can be true. It's usually not accurate. A lead is someone that we know something about, and how much we know about them is how we categorize those leads, what buckets we put them into. Before we dive too deep into the types of leads, let's make sure that we all understand what a lead really means. And we can talk a little bit about what a lead is not as well. In the most basic terms, a lead is someone that you've identified that you know that you want to do business with, someone that you'd love to have as a client or as a customer. A lead is also someone who has engaged with your brand in some way to indicate that they might actually want to do business with you as well, or at least have shown interest in what you're doing. Now, a lead is not your list of connections, right? I mean, some of that list may turn into connections, turn into leads, of course, but realistically make the distinction about those contacts, right? Those relationships are obviously significantly less transactional. They've often been longer relationships, and realistically, they are far more valuable than just a single lead. And remember that the best way to lose those connections is to treat them like they're leads, right? You and your network and your contacts, they're much different than typical leads, and those relationships require an extra little care and a little bit more attention. Now, at the same token, a lead is not someone that you just met at a networking event. They may turn into a lead, of course, but that takes a little work. You need to know a little bit about that person and their business before you can define them as such, right? And oftentimes, just meeting them once at a networking event is not going to do the trick. Now, the best thing that you can do for any lead is your homework. Learn about those leads so that you know how to answer questions and how to turn them into clients with efficiency and maybe even a little grace. I often recommend taking some time to identify the actual attributes of your ideal lead and your ideal client. Knowing who you're looking for and who you actually do identify as a lead is really the cornerstone of successful lead generation of any of those efforts. And if you're going to be hunting and you're going hunting, you need to have the correct bait. Some things I would want to know personally before I consider someone a lead might include things like what industry are they in? So sure, any industry can use Mission Suite, a CRM service, but some are going to be a better fit for me than others. And what are they looking for? What do they need? Are they actually in the market for what I'm doing, right? Do they care about what I'm doing? And then finally, of course, do they have the means to buy what I'm selling, right? Do they have the money? Do they have the time? Do they have the resources to actually engage with me? And then, of course, most of all, do they have some sort of a timeline for doing so? Just like you would define your ideal client avatar, it's important to scale that back and define the attributes of your ideal lead before you start moving forward with this. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of leads and how we can best turn those leads into really great clients for you. So the first type of lead that I want to start talking about is what we refer to in the marketing world as a marketing qualified lead, or an MQL. Now, an MQL is anyone who is engaged with your brand, right? Anybody who's filled out a form, anybody who's, reached out to you on social. It's a pretty broad spectrum, but it's just the first step. An MQL has intentionally interacted with you and with your company, signaling some sort of interest. Now, this could be someone who gives you their email address, they sign up for a demo, ask for more information, so on and so forth. They could be someone who, like I said, engaged with you or your company on social media. Maybe they responded to some sort of marketing effort or downloaded something, who knows, right? They're somewhere in that world. And obviously, they're not someone who is unsubscribed from your mailing list, right? Usually, that person's not going to be a lead. Exceptions, but more often than not. So when I say someone who is engaged with you, I'm speaking, of course, of someone who has actually responded in some positive way. Now, this is called a marketing qualified lead because you more than likely haven't spent much time learning about their needs, building any sort of trust, or really developing them into a really warm and hot lead. So it's really step one on that whole buyer's journey. Now, yes, this might be a warm lead. It's certainly warmer than a cold call, for example, but your work is just beginning. Understand that at this stage, your MQL is not quite ready for a sales pitch. When you sign up for a newsletter, you're probably not ready to make a purchase at that moment, right? Or for that matter, to have a sales guy start hounding you. You're still trying to figure things out. You're comparing brands, you're gathering information, those sorts of things. Now that this lead is squarely in your sales funnel, though, in your marketing funnel, you should have something for them, though. Something special. It's going to help you build trust. It's going to help you move them down that line. Some of them, maybe it's free information. Maybe it's some sort of offer, something that's going to serve a couple different purposes, right? Giving them information and getting information in return. You want to gauge their level of interest and still keep them engaged. And as this is a new lead, don't feel a need to push too hard. We'll work on the best way to get them to the next stage in this whole process in a minute here. But there are two schools of thought when it comes to MQLs. Some say if you can't qualify them, get them out of your funnel and move on. Others say keep them around as sometime you might be able to benefit each other in some way, right? And realistically, both are true. But your MQL engaged with your brand for a reason. Find out more about that and then go from there. There is a chance that they may want to buy and will eventually move to another spot in your sales funnel. Maybe they never will. Maybe they'll just stay in your nurturing campaign, but they're able to kind of consume your content and continue to show interest. Make sure you're asking the right questions. Make sure you're requesting the right information from them until you can actually make a good determination on their intentions and where to move them next. Now let's move on to the next step in this whole funnel here. Let's talk a little bit about a more qualified lead, the sales qualified lead, or the SQL. Now, this is a lead that's moved a little bit deep in your funnel, and we'll talk more about how that happens and how they move from MQL to SQL a little bit later, but for now, let's focus on these SQLs. So a lead becomes an SQL after you've spent some time qualifying them. Oftentimes, it's a conversation with a salesperson, but at the same time, it's still just a warm lead, and they still need some pretty special attention. But at this point, they've deserved it, right? So you've got to do more homework, but the more homework you've done so far, the better, right? You're going to get to start categorizing those SQLs based on what you've learned about them. Now, when that lead was an MQL, they engage with your brand so that you know that they're actually interested. And if you're moving this lead to the SQL world, it means that they've checked some sort of box off in your whole lead generation program, right? And of course, you know the means and needs, and you should have learned a little bit more about them than that as well. Now, when I talk about the means, of course, I'm talking about the money, the resources, the time. And if the whole point of this is to make a sale and close a deal, then you've got to make sure that they've got the budget and the money to buy from you. Otherwise, the lead is still pretty cold, right? And it's not really a sales qualified lead. So you've got better things to do with your time, do it. By now, you should also know what their timeline is. Now, when is this person going to be ready to buy from me? Right? These are the things that we look at. And depending on what your typical sales cycle is, well, this little bit of information can be really important because knowing the timing is key to mapping out the rest of their journey. If your lead is looking to buy in the next 12 months, for example, your journey is obviously going to be a lot longer, and your strategy to keep them engaged will be different than someone who's ready to buy today, right? For example, my sales cycle is 30 days. If 12 months out there, I need to figure out some way to keep in touch with them. And of course, if they are prepared to buy, then I need to act fast as well. Each buyer's journey is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to have to adapt quickly to keep this lead warm, right? But you're going to have to keep in touch with them. Now, have only goal with that SQL, right? You've got one goal, and that is for them to buy, and they should be ready to buy. They have spent time getting to know you, getting to know your company, and by this point, you've spent enough time with them to understand that this is a client in the making, right? Even the highest sales volume situations, you should be confident that this lead is ready to be handled by sales. If you're not sure, you might want to go back to your checklist. And, if you don't have one, well, you should probably make one. But make sure one way or another that you can check all the boxes that you need to. And of course, last but not least, none of this happens overnight. Right? The journey from MQL to SQL is a process, and we're going to get into that next. But each lead, client, buyer, whatever, they've got the journey. Our job is to shepherd each lead to that next phase as best we can. So as promised, now we're going to talk a little bit about how to move a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. All right? We've been talking about it all throughout this video. Now we're going to dive into it. As you already know, each buyer's journey is going to be a little bit different from the next. Right? And this stage is certainly no exception. There's no magic wand. There's no formula. There's nothing, no silver bullet that we can do that we use that will magically turn a lead into a paying client. What I can tell you is that if you do the right work, then you're going to be successful. Do your homework, ask the right questions, build your rapport, and you're going to be effective. And this goes for digital marketing or direct selling, what have you, right? But this moved from MQL to SQL is based on information and relationship, right? It's all about knowledge and trust. So let's start with information. Now, in a perfect world, you may be able to ask, hey, are you ready to move right now? You ready to buy from me right now? And do you have the money to do so? But, you're not going to get a lot of response on that. It's going to be a little jarring, right? As effective as they may be, they do nothing for the relationship. So we may have to find some more, some lesser, less jarring ways to find that information. So start with your homework, right? What do you need from them? What do you need from this specific lead? And what do they need from you? Before you spend your time working on the lead, make sure that they hit all the important marks on your ideal client checklist. You've got the information that you need from them. They've given you that information to show that they trust you that much. But specifically, think about this lead, not just any lead. In all the years that I've been doing this, I found that people don't enjoy being sold to as much as they like buying things, right? They like doing business with the people that they know, like, and trust. So spend your time here not just digging for information, but make sure that you're building trust and really building up your relationship as well. Shift your thinking from salesperson or marketer to resource, right? It's the very first step in sales is education. Don't just think about how or what you can be selling, but think about what you can be teaching them, right? What problems you can help them solve and figure out solutions for them. This is how you're going to gain trust, right? It's how you're going to get them to give you more information. Down the road, you can absolutely shift back to thinking, hey, how can I make their life easier? What can they buy from me in order to do so if they're interested, right? I mean, we can absolutely talk that. But this is where your homework starts paying off. The more you know about that lead, the better that you can ask those right questions, right? Assess their needs, and then finally, like I said, provide those solutions. What can they buy from me to fix what they need to do, right? And if the answer is nothing, that's okay too. Because once you've built that relationship a little bit, you should be able to have a frank conversation with your potential client about their needs, their life, their timeline, their budget, and whether or not you can really provide service to them. And if you can't, it's important to be honest with that too, because again, if this is all about knowledge and trust, that conversation of I can't do much for you is going to do so much more than trying to figure out a way to square every circle and make the pegs fit. So now let's talk a little bit about setting the right expectations for your leads. Now, I know plenty of salespeople that think that just because they've done all the right things up till now, the sales are going to start flowing and they're going to be able to retire to some sort of an island in a month and a half. Well, it's not really the way that it works, right? We know this. But you're on the right path now, right? But now's the time to put your most extraordinary sales skills, patience, and flexibility to work. Be patient. It just doesn't always come easy right out of the gate, right? Your persistence and the endurance that you're going to show are an absolute must when it comes to lead generation and selling. And there are always going to be days when you have doubts. I've been doing this for 20 years. I still have them, right? But if you're doing the homework, if you're doing all that work, it's going to pay off. Just give it time. If you still don't see results, it could be time to start looking at changing your approach, but do some research, get some advice, hire somebody. And then the second piece is be flexible, right? Be ready to try things, fail at things, try again, adjust, right? And keep trying. This process is not an exact science. You're going to need to be prepared to experiment, refine, and rework, right? As I used to say, test, measure, refine. As I said a few times today, everyone's journey to the finish line is going to be different. Every single lead. And your ability to adapt could make all the difference in the long run, because not all sales leads are the same, and not all salespeople are able to adapt. So if you want to set yourself apart, that's the way you can do so. I've also found that keeping some notes as you go is an excellent tool, right? This practice has helped me define and refine my process. One thing always remains consistent. It's never the same game twice, you know? What worked perfectly for one person is probably not going to resonate for the next person. So let some of the small details go and focus on how the overall process is working. Keep good notes and be prepared to erase and start over if you have to. I can't stress this enough. There is no magic wand for lead generation and for sales, right? You have to do the work, and you have to arm yourself with all the right tools. So look at different systems, look at platforms, take a look at Mission Suite, right? This is what we do. This is the world that we live in, and we can help you with this. So while you're here, go check it out. Listen, as always, I really hope that you got something out of this video. If you did, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, maybe give it a share so that others can see it too. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so that you're notified every time that we post new videos. And while you're at it, do me a favor, check out the videos that are on your screen right now, and we will see you next time around. Cheers.